Salesian sports broadcasting for the NFL. I am Colin, and we're going to talk about what just happened in Week 1. Now, Week 1's still not over. Tonight we have the Ravens versus the Raiders, but basically fully done with Week 1 action. There's one specific team I'd like to highlight on, my favorite team, the team I've been watching for about a decade now, the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants lost yesterday. They lost pretty bad to the Denver Broncos. The final score of 27-13, but basically it was 27-7 as the Giants just scored a last-second garbage time touchdown with Daniel Jones had a 4-yard rushing touchdown. But to describe as a Giants fan how disappointing this loss is, we need to use some context behind this. Go back in time. We're going to go back to the 2020 NFL season. And that was the first season where Joe Judge was head coach of the Giants and Daniel Jones was the full-time starter quarterback. The Giants started off that season 1-7, and many people in New York were already quick to write off the team. Many people thought that Jones wasn't the guy, Joe Judge was going to get fired soon, just wasn't looking good very well in MetLife Stadium. But what transpired next game we hope in the Giants, they won 5 out of their last 8 games, including a 4-game winning streak. Now, granted, it wasn't against the best of football teams. I mean, they did beat the Seattle Seahawks in a huge upset win, probably one of the biggest upset wins of the season. But overall, the New York Giants, they really came together at that stretch of the season. The offense still wasn't there, but the defense really was great. Like, that defense during the second half of the season truly played like a top 10 defense in the league. And it was great to watch. You had guys like Logan Ryan, previous Super Bowl champion, stepping up. Leonard Williams having a breakout year. James Bradbury emerging as a top corner in the game. And overall, it's just like watching that team, it gave me hope for a very long time. But then we get to the final game of the season, where it was Giants versus Cowboys. The Giants ended up winning that game in a very intense game. Then, all that meant then was for that, in order for the Giants to make the playoffs, a 6-10 team, all they needed to do to make the playoffs was for Philadelphia to beat Washington. And ultimately, it turned out to be no small task, as the Eagles did end up losing that game to Washington, and Washington ended up winning the 2020 NFC East with only a record of 7-9. Now, many people often did criticize Giants fans, Giants players for being mad over the Eagles because there's a bunch of people who were saying that they tanked the game because back then Jalen Hurts was the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles and was playing pretty well to his credit in his first couple of games in the NFL. And then in that final game, he kind of held together a solid out, better than the numbers show. And the Philadelphia Eagles are still very competitive in the game with Washington, which gave many Giants fans excitement, possibly their 6-10 team to make the playoffs. But, however, Philadelphia Eagles head coach Doug Peterson made a very inexplicable move to put in first-string quarterback Nate Sudfeld and give him a couple reps for what he said was that he deserved it. Now, obviously, I'm not going to agree with that. I do not like what Doug Peterson did in that situation. It ended up costing the Giants a playoff spot. But overall, you can't be too mad at it because, once again, the Giants did it to themselves. They started off the season 1-7, finished off 5-3, however. And the good main consensus around the building was that we'll just wait till next year. Everyone likes the team. It seems to be improving. Joe Judge's message seems to be sticking. So, fast forward to this offseason for the New York Giants. There are still a lot of holes to be addressed, and they did address a lot of their holes. They signed star wide receiver Kenny Golladay to a huge contract. Golladay, although he's been often injured in Detroit, really does add a whole entire dimension to this offense. He's a big catch target and is a true number 1 wide receiver for the Giants offense and that young Daniel Jones is lacking. They also added a great veteran presence such as Kyle Rudolph, who in his years in Minnesota has been a great receiving tight end. Now, on top of that, too, they ended up getting Adoree Jackson from the Tennessee Titans, filling up their huge cornerback 2 hole, which they really needed because oftentimes James Bradbury did a phenomenal job last year. But he really had no one else in the secondary, at least on the corner side, to really help him. And Adoree Jackson was sure to be that addition. In the draft, they ended up giving Daniel Jones yet another weapon in Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Toney is often described as a gadget guy, a guy who could, maybe be a spark plug, generate big plays for the offense. So it's still got to be seen what he can do. He didn't get a lot of action on Sunday, but it'd be very fun to watch him play. And perhaps the biggest thing the Giants had going for them going into the season is a healthy Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, at his best, is easily a top 5 running back in the NFL. His talent is undeniable. He's one of the best generational talents at running back we probably have ever seen. And whenever Saquon's there, his numbers have proved Daniel Jones is 1,000 times better with Saquon Barkley behind him in the backfield. And, just having Saquon Barkley in general adds a whole other dimension to that offense because he can really do things that not many other running backs ever can do. And once again, going back on the Joe Judge factor, Joe Judge is very well respected. He seems to be among the players. Many people did criticize his coaching style, thinking that he was too much like a high school football coach and too much strict on his players. But the players seem to have responded to the message, especially in the second half of the season. But anyway, we go to Sunday. Giants playing the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos have not necessarily been a great team recently. In fact, Drew Lock, who they thought was going to be their franchise quarterback, they ended up benching prior to the season for Teddy Bridgewater, a guy who was kind of bounced around the league for a little bit after having a short amount of success in Minnesota. But the defense for Denver has always been very good, ever since they won their Super Bowl back in 2015. You still have a guy like Von Miller there, who's still one of the best defensive players in the NFL. So, regardless, everyone knew that the Giants had a challenging game on Sunday. Many people, though, still anticipated the Giants were going to win, especially considering the fact they were back in MetLife Stadium at full capacity for the first time since 2019. So, there was just a lot of excitement surrounding this game on Sunday. And what did the Giants do? They did what often they do in recent history. They did not deliver. Starting off, the offensive line, it didn't do terrible on Sunday, but it's still for sure a problem. For years, the Giants have always had an issue with their offensive line. Now, there are some guys in that O-line who I do like. I think that you have Nick Gates at center, who just recently named a captain. He can be a good presence at center. You do have Nate Solder. Now, he does often get beat, but he brings a good veteran presence to that offensive line. But the main issue here is Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas was drafted 4th overall in the 2020 draft. And really, the Giants had any choice of any tackle in that draft that they wanted. They passed on 3 other tackles who are all having success currently. Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, and Dredrick Wills. All those guys have turned into great blindside tackles. Andrew Thomas still has not been that yet. And it's just very concerning for Dave Gettleman as a Giants general manager, trying that he had all the opportunity to fix his offensive line and put the most important position on the offensive line, a great player on the field. And as of right now, he hasn't been able to do that. The offensive line, like I said, was not the huge issue on Sunday, but it's still going to be a problem going forward. And if you go over to what I think was the biggest issue in this game, the defense was just not able to get off the field. The reason for this is because the Giants truly do not have a true edge rusher. Now, Leonard Williams had a great year last year, but he mostly played as their interior D lineman. He racked up over double-digit sacks and also got a huge contract, which is still yet to be seen if he will prove, but in order for the Giants to get off the field more, they need a big edge rusher to be able to sack the quarterback. Because there's only so much a secondary can do for so long. Eventually, the secondary is going to give out. You need to generate more pressure on the quarterback. And in all honesty, they could not bring Teddy Bridgewater down yesterday. Bridgewater had one play where it looked like he was about to get sacked about 2 times, but still escaped out of the pocket and threw a 4-yard touchdown throw to the tight end. And really, just the time of possession, the Giants scored touchdowns. Sterling Shepard had a big day. Shout out to him. He's been on the team for about 5 years now. He scored a touchdown in the second quarter. Giants took a 7-3 lead. But ever since then, they really didn't have a true meaningful possession until basically over near the fourth quarter, honestly. It was over like 6 minutes left in the third quarter. They didn't get a meaningful possession until. But even then, the Giants were still pushing down the field. The offense is looking promising. Daniel Jones at this point didn't really had a pretty relatively solid game. Numbers says his final stat line was 260 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions. But when the Giants were 20 yards away from the end zone, looking to cut it to a 6-point game, Daniel Jones did what many Giants fans are hoping he would stop doing. He fumbled the football. And it was a very bad fumble. A fumble which killed all the Giants' momentum. A fumble which basically sealed away the game. Daniel Jones needs to stop the fumbling problem, simply. I've seen that now. He just started his 3rd season in his NFL career. Daniel Jones already has 40 turnovers, including both his fumbles and his interceptions. That's unacceptable. It cannot continue to happen. For years, the Giants have tried to prioritize helping Daniel Jones' fumbling problem out, but it just never seems that he can maintain that grip on the football, and it's something that needs to happen. And the thing about that, too, is that he can't go out there and keep running thinking he's going to win matchups against linebackers, because that's what he did there on that fumble. He did it, just slide to the ground, he went at the linebacker, and ended up being the right decision. And ultimately, that's what killed the drive and killed the Giants' momentum entirely. And it's just very tough to see, because with all the additions they made to this offense, all the weapons, for them to only really muster 7 points meaningfully, it's just very tough to see as a fan. It's something that definitely concerns you. But aside from this bad performance on Sunday, the Giants on Thursday head to Washington on Thursday Night Football to play the Washington football team, who actually just lost starter Ryan Fitzpatrick to a hip injury. Taylor Heineke will start for the Washington football team, and although he really started off last season as really a guy who never played any NFL snaps, to his credit, he's done a pretty decent job in the role he was put in. He played in the playoff game last year against Tampa Bay, and to all accounts, put up a pretty respectable performance for a guy who really wasn't expected to do anything. Taylor Heineke still concerns me in that game, but it's still a game, once again, that the Giants should win, considering the football team, the Washington football team are undermanned. And it's a win that they need to have, because too often the Giants dig themselves a hole in seasons. What the biggest downfall was last year. They ended off the season great. They started off 1-7. So many years the Giants start off with bad starts and start off 1-7, 2-6. Cannot happen again. So, biggest key for the Giants is just that The offensive play call from Jason Garrett's got to be better. Defense needs to get off the field more, and Daniel Jones just needs to learn the ball security problem. He needs to get it fixed. And it really does need to happen this year because, to be honest with you, a lot of jobs are on the line here. For all intents and purposes, if the Giants once again have another disappointing year, it's pretty much widely known that Daniel Jones will most likely be gone. And the Giants will have the assets to move up to. Say if they are not a good team this year, they also have the Chicago Bears first round pick. They could package those two deals and move up easily to a top 5 pick in the draft, which could easily get them another quarterback. So Daniel Jones knows the clock is ticking on him. He has to have a good season. The Giants need to make the playoffs. And another person to watch out for is Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman has been on this team for at least the past 4 years now, constructing this team. And he still has not been able to solve many problems, such as an edge rusher or a key O-lineman. Something that needs to be seen for this team, or else Dave Gettleman really has been a pretty unsuccessful manager if his team cannot perform this year. And I do not want to see this happen, but also you can argue the fact that if the Giants have another bad season, Joe Judge's job could be on the hot seat. Don't want to see it happen once again, because I really do like what he's been doing for that team. But you have to figure the Giants have been pretty impatient recently. Ben McAdoo got fired not even 2 years into his coaching career for the Giants, and Pat Shermer only went 2 years as well. So it seems like recently John Mayer of the Giants has even come out and said that this team is expected to win. He expects winning for the Giants. And it's just necessary that they do. I mean, I don't want to see Joe Judge gone. I really like what he's doing. I think he's been given a bad hand with a lot of the teams he's been given. But ultimately, it's just the way that goes in the NFL. No job is ever secure. No job is ever safe. And one other thing, going back to something you guys like to add in, is that now I don't fault him for this because it's been over a year since he's been playing. But Saquon Barkley, in his first game off an ACL injury, did not have a really great start. He only had 26 rushing yards for 10 carries for a 2.6 average. I expect that number to go up. But that's also a big key. The Giants need a healthy Saquon Barkley. He needs to be the guy that he was because just the dynamic he brings to that offense is truly undeniable. Without a true running back too, Saquon Barkley needs to be Saquon Barkley for the Giants to be successful. And I mean, yeah, overall, it wasn't a great start for the Giants, but there was a lot of other great football games though over the weekend, such as actually going back to Thursday, the first game of the season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, many people thought that Dallas Cowboys not deserve to be on the NFL kickoff game. I did not think so either, because the Cowboys weren't great last year. But Dak Prescott, coming off that injury, the season-ending injury, played a very good game for all accounts. Now, there was a very close game. The Cowboys even took the lead in the last, with a minute and a half left. Tom Brady did what Tom Brady always does and let a game-winning drive. Although there was controversy on an offensive pass interference from Chris Godwin. But ultimately, Buccaneers get the game-winning field goal. Buccaneers move up to 1-0. Still a great game to watch, but Dallas still has a defensive problem, but that offense definitely is something to look out for. And in the Sunday Night Football game that just happened last night, the Los Angeles Rams beat the Chicago Bears in a relatively uncompetitive game, even though at one point the Bears pulled 6 points. And in Chicago, it's become very unpopular for starting quarterback Andy Dalton to still be out there. The fans want to see Justin Fields. He even got a rushing touchdown last night. And I just think that eventually the Bears are going to have to pull the trigger on Justin Fields starting a quarterback because there's only so much more lawn you can really give a fan base that has been waiting to see a quarterback basically for the past, basically all their history. They've never really had a great franchise quarterback. They believe that Justin Fields can be that guy and they want to see him be that guy. So the hope is soon that Justin Fields can go out there and see the field. Another news too in New York Jets lost, although they did keep it a relatively competitive game to their credit against the Carolina Panthers. I'm sure it hurt though for a lot of Jets fans considering how Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson went on the Carolina Panthers and did beat them. They even had a nice connection too for a deep touchdown Darnold to Anderson. So that's sure to get a lot of Jets fans, I'm sure, sad. But Zach Wilson is gonna have to be good for them because the Jets once again are another team much like the Chicago Bears have not had a franchise quarterback for a long time. Zach Wilson, they do hope is the guy, and he really should be the guy because once again, if the Jets miss out on Zach Wilson, if he turns out to not be a good quarterback, and you have a guy like Trey Lance or Mac Jones that ended up being great, it's going to once again look bad on the Jets because they just have not been able to get the quarterback right. But I saw Zach Wilson to have a nice throw yesterday for a deep touchdown, and one thing that concerns me though about the Jets is a player who I just mentioned earlier, Kai Beckham, the left tackle, did have an injury. We don't know the severity of it yet, but it didn't look very good. That's definitely going to hurt Zach Wilson going forward, losing his best blindside tackle. But overall, the Jets aren't expecting to do much this year, but you just need to see progress at Zach Wilson. And I think overall, it was a great week of football. Russell Wilson also had in a 4-touchdown game. He's looking like the Russell Wilson as he usually does in the beginning of the season. We have to wait and see if he can hold on to the same pace as at the beginning of the season first. But by all accounts, though, a very good week of football. And, I'm excited to see what happens in week 2. I'm definitely going to be tuning in on Thursday for Giants versus Washington football team and seeing what happens. Hoping for a Giants win, but I mean, at this point, I can never be confident in the Giants anymore. They just never be confident in them. But I can be hopeful. I hope that we can win on Thursday against Washington, or else I'm not going to be feeling very positive about the season. But I think overall, I think that pretty much wraps it up for Salesian Sports Broadcast and NFL section. I'm Colin, signing off. Thank you for listening.